Moscow. Tanya Feljengauer can recall nearly every frantic moment when a listener broke into the Moscow radio station where she works last month and stabbed her repeatedly in the neck. Then she remembers waking up in a Moscow hospital bed, under heavy anesthesia, with tubes everywhere and a stack of panicked notes from colleagues and friends. At first, doctors wondered whether Feljengauer, an outspoken, popular host for the Echo of Moscow radio station, would ever speak, or breathe on her own, again. But on a recent Friday, she sat in an Italian cafe sipping tea and calmly ticking off her injuries: damage to her jugular vein and salivary gland, cuts on her neck and hands, in a soft but resolute voice that proved her remarkable recovery from a near-fatal attack. Already she was plotting her return to Drive Time Radio, where she co-hosts a talk show that pokes fun at Russian politicians and newsmakers. "I love journalism, I love my morning show, I love my radio station," said Feljengauer, 32, who has worked for Echo of Moscow, where she serves as deputy editor-in-chief, since she was a teenager. "The attempt on my life will not change it." With a slight smile, she added, "I'll probably have to come up with some jokes about my throat." Assailant stabs top journalist at leading Moscow radio station. Her good-natured banter covered up real trauma. Feljengauer said that since the stabbing she has avoided reading about her attacker, a 48-year-old man named Boris Gritz, who disabled a security guard and then fell on her with a knife in the radio station's green room. Photographs of the blood-stained floor provoked outrage on social networks among Russians who saw this as yet another in a series of assaults on well-known journalists. Some elements of the attack on Feljengauer recalled a long campaign of violence against Russian journalists. Others seemed at odds with that history. In Russia, journalists who rile powerful interests, particularly the local businessmen and politicians who dominate the country's regions, can be met with violence or pressure from the police. This year, a colleague of Feljengauer's, a columnist for the Novaya Gazeta newspaper named Yulia Ladynina, fled Russia after her car was set on fire. After the attack on Feljengauer, the editor of Novaya Gazeta said he would arm his newsroom with rubber bullet pistols. The murders of some journalists, including Novaya Gazeta correspondent Anna Politkovskaya in 2006 and Forbes Russia editor Paul Klebnikov in 2004, became national scandals. Those who ordered the killings, the Zakazchiki, were never caught. Here are 10 critics of Vladimir Putin who died violently or in suspicious ways. But far from the gangland assassinations or courtyard beatings that have targeted journalists in the past, the attempt on Feljengauer's life seemed less calculated and more chaotic. When questioned by police, Gritz said Feljengauer had harassed him for years using telepathy. He seemed crazy for days afterward. Debate raged among Moscow circles of journalists and liberals as to whether the attack could have been part of a conspiracy to silence a critical voice. Feljengauer said she was trying not to jump to conclusions.